Welcome, everybody. Today is horror time. Give me 1 second. I am back. As I was saying, welcome to horror time. Today we are watching Scary Doll Story. I know it's the same name as the last one, but I'm pretty sure it's a different story. But right now, let's just get into the video, see if we can get through some of them, and let's go.
In middle school, me and my best friend were obsessed with filming haunted places. We pretty much explored every haunted place in the city, but never saw anything interesting. We were wandering around the woods when we came across a house that looked abandoned for a long time. We were stoked at the idea of a new adventure, so we decided to go in. The doors had locks, but we were able to get rid of them rather easily. We walked into the house and looked around with our flashlights. Although it was dark and somewhat old, the house wasn't in bad condition. The closets were still filled up with clothes. The fridge was filled with rotten food, and there were still family photos hanging up. As we investigated the place more, we realized the house didn't look like it had been moved out of, but just straight up abandoned. I paused for a second and looked at one of the family photos. Something about it just gave me the utter creeps. Without me noticing, my friend had wandered into a room while I was staring at the family photo. I heard her scream and ran to where she was. I don't know why, but she was completely freaked out. I turned my head to the corner of the room and saw something extremely unsettling. It was a porcelain doll, sitting on a rocking chair. The doll had glossy blue eyes, blonde hair, and a fluffy dress. Normally, creepy dolls don't bother me, but this doll had a huge crack on its cheek, and nothing about it seemed like a little girl would love to play with it. As I was looking at the doll, the chair began to rock back and forth. Me and my friend glanced at each other, both knowing no sort of breeze could have gotten into this room. The chair suddenly stopped rocking, and that's what prompted us to get out of that creepy house. Later on, when we watched the recording at home, we noticed the doll's head move slightly when my friend entered the room. We tried to research the house to see if there was any sort of backstory, but we couldn't find any. Neither of us had any sort of idea on why there was a creepy doll there. A couple of nights afterwards, I was getting ready for bed when my best friend called me. I picked up the phone, and she sounded panicked. She started to explain what happened. She was home alone when the doorbell rang. She opened the door and saw something on her welcome mat that terrified her. The porcelain doll of herself. I was creeped out just hearing her explain it, and told her to come to my house as soon as possible. I heard a knock on my door as soon as I hung up. I opened the door, ready to greet her, when I had a horrifying sight instead. It was a porcelain doll of me.
Okay, that's a bit creepy. Not gonna lie, because there's not ever like a chance that you have
Hey, I
someone
just
just
created a
drop off a
professional
doll.
Wix site for my business. Let's check it out. Go to Wix.com.
Oops. I
When I
think
was
we'll
17,
watch two.
my aunt
How
asked
long
me to
is this
house
one?
sit for her. It wasn't my first time house sitting,
Two
and I was
more,
free
and
that
then
weekend,
we'll be done with the video for
so I
today.
accepted the offer. The plan was that I would house sit from Friday to Sunday while she went out of town. I arrived at her place Friday evening. When I went inside, she told me to be careful at night because her basement lock didn't work. I told her I would be fine and that she didn't have to worry about anything. After she finished explaining all her rules, I stood in the driveway and waved goodbye to her as she left. Her house was somewhat large, so I began to make sure everything was nice and neat to avoid cleaning up later. I closed all the room doors, then headed downstairs and turned on a movie. I glanced at the basement door, remembering what my aunt said, then turned my attention to the movie as it began. While laying on the couch, I somehow drifted off. When I woke up, all I could hear was a mysterious sound. I sat up on the couch, pausing the movie and looking around to try and figure out where it was coming from. My eyes went towards the basement door. It was open slightly. although I definitely remember closing it a while ago. Something about the thought of going down to the basement all alone at night sent chills down my spine. I hadn't been to the basement yet, so I couldn't even think of what the noise could be. Even if I was being extremely paranoid, I still decided to call the police. When an operator picked up, I calmly told her the situation. I told her that it wasn't a big deal, so they didn't have to rush. I hung up the phone, then kept on glancing at the basement door. In less than 5 minutes, 4 cops were at my front door. One cop pulled me to the side and explained that whenever I hung up the phone, the operator heard a second click, meaning someone else was in the house, listening to the phone call. The police officers came out with a deranged man in handcuffs. One of the officers explained that they found him sitting on top of the washer, using a machete to bang the washer and dryer, trying to lure me down.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. I didn't say fully, but like sort of. So this one's 4 minutes long. I'm gonna watch one more, and then we'll be done with the video. Someone tried to break into the house.
I am a 16-year-old girl. Years ago, in the summer, I left my place in the city to visit my aunt and uncle's house in the suburbs of New Jersey. I mainly went to hang out with my cousin. Let's call her Kate. My cousin and I are 3 years apart. My aunt and uncle both worked in Manhattan. One day, my aunt and uncle decided to attend a party after work. During the day, Kate and I went down to the street to her friend's house because they had a pool. We spent all day swimming. When we walked back to her house, it was around 4 p.m. It was still sunny out. All of a sudden, Kate's phone stopped working. Nothing to worry about. I still had mine and it was brand new. We spent another hour outside and figured it was time to call my aunt to tell her we were okay. On the steps, I pulled my phone out, but it was not working. We took the battery out, put it back in, but still nothing. With no way to call my aunt, we just went inside the house. It was maybe 5 p.m. Kate's older sister, Julie, a high schooler, was spending the night at her friend's house, so we were all alone. In the living room, we put the 2 sofas together as we normally did when I slept over. We were both tired and ready to sleep. We had been left alone like this a lot of times, so it didn't faze us. The house is big and gets pitch black. All of a sudden, we heard a big bang that sounded like brass or metal coming from across the hall. We got up and checked Kate's room. Nothing had fallen. We went back to the living room to sleep. Maybe 2 hours later, we heard another bang coming from the room. We checked again. Nothing had fallen. This time, we were a little unnerved. We went back but stayed up and shortly heard a bang a third time coming from the same room. We were nervous. We went on opposite sides of the hallway and walked in the room this time like a little SWAT team. Everything was intact. We couldn't sleep after. We stayed up on the sofas and saw a shadow coming from the basement. The basement had no door. It was just open. No one was home yet. We called out for Kate's parents, and if they were home, they would have said something. Their driveway was empty. Their car wasn't there. We were terrified. Kate and I grabbed knives, and we just stayed down on the kitchen floor. Nothing happened. After another hour, we went back to the sofas. We woke up to the sound of a girl screaming, "Help me!" We sprang up and heard someone banging on the door, but we were too petrified because we saw another shadow next to the shadow from earlier. Terrified, we just made sure the door was locked and went back to the sofa. After 30 minutes, we were woken up again, but this time to a police car and ambulance lights coming through from the living room windows. We were exhausted and went back to sleep. Sometime during the early morning, Kate's parents came home. We were sleeping and heard a huge bang coming from Kate's room. This time, my uncle came up from the basement, which is where my aunt and uncle's room was. He was holding one of his metal bats. He was ready to protect us. With my uncle in front of us, we all went into the room. Nothing was on the ground and nothing had fallen. We knew we weren't crazy because even Kate's parents heard it. We never could explain what happened that night. The next morning, both Kate and my phone started working. After that day, I hated going to their house. I believe their house is haunted.
It's the
Either that
doll.
or someone was trying to come inside because they knew their car wasn't in the driveway and they thought they could break in.
Okay. Okay. Let's watch this one. Last video.
On one Friday
I'll end the
afternoon, I
video.
got a call from my friend Sarah.
Last video, guys, and then I'll end the video. Okay, guys? Don't forget to hit the button. Make sure the red button under the video is turned gray and hit the bell.
Asking if I wanted to meet her and another friend Lisa at Dunkin' Donuts as we hadn't seen one another in a long time. I got there after a 15-minute walk and found them sitting together, so I joined them. As we were chatting, I noticed that my sister Elena was sat at a table in the corner of the room with her friend Jess. I excused myself from the table and went over to my sister. Immediately, Elena whispered to me, "Don't look now, but the guy in the blue shirt, I think he's been following Jess and I." She told me that he's passed their table a good 5 times in the past 20 minutes to go to the bathroom, but he walks slower every time he passes them. I told them they were most likely being paranoid and there was nothing to worry about, but for their peace of mind, I offered to leave with them so they wouldn't feel as worried. I walked back to my table and explained the situation to Sarah and Lisa. Both of them laughed it off and assumed my sister was being paranoid as well. Literally about a minute later, I saw the man get up from his seat and walk towards the bathroom. My eyes followed him, and sure enough, he walked extremely slow past Elena and Jess. In fact, it was almost comical how obviously slow he became. Both Elena and Jess looked in my direction, and I nodded to show that I had seen him walk slower. About 5 minutes later, I walked towards the restroom, and I passed Elena and Jess and told them I was ready to leave whenever they were. They both agreed that they wanted to go now, so I said we could leave after I finished going to the restroom. Elena had come in her car, so she was going to give me a lift back. I was walking down the corridor back into the main eating room when Elena and Jess rushed towards me. I asked them what's going on, and they explained that another man had joined the strange creeper and that the men were both pointing and staring at them. We walked back to the eating area. I put my money on our table and explained to Lisa and Sarah that I was taking off and I would explain what was going on when I got home. We all got into Elena's car and left. After a 2-minute drive, we reached my house. Just then, I remembered that I had been meaning to return something I had borrowed from my mother, so I asked if Elena could drive me to my parents' house as she was going there anyways. I jumped out the car to get what I needed when my phone began to ring. It was Elena. She explained that a car had driven past and had pulled into a driveway. She said that the driver was the creep from Dunkin' Donuts. I looked out my window and sure enough there was a car which didn't belong to the owner of the house parked on their driveway. I got the girls into the house and locked the door. I instructed Elena to take a photo of the car and the license plate and told Jess to call 911 as she would give the operator more information than what I could. Elena took the photos and we sort of gathered around Jess as she was speaking to the operator. She had finished telling the story and I heard the operator assure us that the police would be on their house soon. A few minutes passed and there was a loud knock at the front door followed by a voice shouting, "It's the police!" We all did a sigh of relief as I went to open the door. Jess told the operator that the police were here and she hung up. Definitely something she shouldn't have done. I was in the process of unlocking the door when I thought to look through the spy hole at the top. I peered through and it wasn't a police officer. It was the same guy. I froze in fear and I didn't know what to say. "We didn't call the police!" Elena and Jess were both confused as to why I said this. "You have the wrong address!" I informed the girls that it was the creep at the door and not a police officer. Both were rightfully shocked and extremely scared, as was I. "We had a call, sir!" I was about to tell Jess to call the police again until I heard the sirens. "Sir, you have to let me in!" I heard the police pull up and some commotion outside. This time an actual police officer knocked on the door and I let him in. The police officers took the man into custody while another police officer took Elena and Jess into the dining room for some brief questioning. The man was found with a kitchen knife and some other weapons in the car. Everyone was relieved and thankful the police arrived on time. Who knows what could have happened if I didn't look through the spy hole first and accidentally let that man in our house.
Well, guys, that's gonna be the end of this video for right now. But until next time, Bye bye, hasta la vista, all the goodbyes. But make sure you hit the like button. For me, it will make my day happy. Thank you. Bye bye.